Hello, everybody. It's great to be here one more time today. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm the CEO, president, and founder of GSD Get You Done Venture Studios, a premier AI and quantum venture studio located in the heart of Silicon Valley. I'm a 17-time serial entrepreneur, was several unicorns under the belt. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion, and also Eva.ai, an AI HR tech company that I co-founded with Dr. David Yang. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. So Simplenight AI Presents. It is great to be here. I'm your host, and we have an incredible guest one more time, Eric Pelletier. Eric Pelletier is a former Bain consultant. Eric's been an entrepreneur, an investor, a professor. I mean, he's got a well-rounded background, but the thing he knows about is going global. So with that, my good friend, Eric Pelletier. Hi, Eric.
Hi, Gary. How are you?
Good, really good. Good to see you today. And I heard the birds earlier in the background. Are you in Paris right now, or where are you?
Yeah, these are Parisian birds.
Parisian seagulls?
Yeah, which they shouldn't be here, but it's cold, so they fly from the coast to Paris.
They probably want to pick up the good food on the streets.
Yeah, there's more food there. Yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Let's start simple. When you hear going global, Eric, for a SaaS company startup, what does it really mean? And this year in 2025, with all the challenges that we have in front of us, how does that look from your perspective?
First question you need to ask yourself is why do you want to be global? Because for a SaaS, it does make sense because most applications you want, strong virality, you want economies of scale, and the fact is what you do usually is pretty much applicable to everywhere. Now, so it makes sense to go global. Now the question becomes when you do that, what are the issues? We're living in complicated times, um, and but it's interesting because it raises the question on non-tariff barriers. Okay, which actually used to be sort of hidden issue, but in tech for SaaS, it's a real issue because take the example of the EU. There's a set of regulation GDPR that actually forced American startups to actually operate differently, the way they introduce data, present data, store data, and all these things. So um, you want to go global. The first step you need to take is does it make sense? Usually it does. Second step is what are the implications? And first implication is on the legal side. Legal, there's all what you do with data simply. On the second level is patent IP. Are you protected? Um,
Well, and
uh,
that's something people don't think about. It's not till it's too late, where
yeah,
you start having a problem. Um, I heard a case recently where a startup didn't go down and do their IP, right? So they started up, they didn't do their IP. This is a real scenario, right? So they didn't do it. Another company did go down through and get their patents. And so this company who's really growing, experiencing explosive growth, the company that got the patents came after because
yeah,
they had no patents. And now it's a mess, right? They're saying, listen, you need to stop what you're doing because it's not you're tramping on our patents, and here's how much you're going to owe us. I mean, they're coming up with it's a real scenario, and so they don't think about it. That's one thing about the startups. When you're building your company, you never realize you're going to create a company that's going to be a unicorn, right? In the beginning, everybody thinks you're just trying to stay alive, but in reality, it happens very, very quickly.
yeah. And the example you give is a great one because in my experience, well, what I've seen is many startups get interested by their IP issues too late, and it's something difficult to fix. because the law is, once again
You're
comparing.
right. It's too different. And they don't think about it, right? They
Yeah,
don't think about the patents or the trademark. The other thing
yeah.
is the trademark. You don't own your trademark, you got a problem, and it's not so easy to get it.
No,
So
and it's very difficult to fix after the fact. Um, and people need to be very aware of that, because there are some companies or predators that actually are experts at identifying IP and taking it away from you if you didn't do things very well. And it is complicated. One example, the in some places, whenever something has been published on the process or an ID, uh, if it's been published externally, you can't protect it anymore. Other places you can. So it's a maze, and you need to fix that from the at the beginning. Uh, on the legal side, the third set of issues is tax. Um, and so we all know tax is as unpleasant as death, probably more. Um, the and same thing, tax. If you don't set it up right at the beginning, it's very difficult, very costly to fix. One of the reasons why it's costly to fix is that the tax authorities, when they see you playing games with structure and stuff after the fact, I mean, they usually hit you very hard. So at the beginning, you need to really figure out. So what you need to do, figure out from a data standpoint, processor standpoint, what you need to do. IP, check it out and make sure you're protected. And tax, make sure that from the very beginning, you get a structure that actually works. Um,
yeah, exactly. I agree with you. I remember one of the companies I was involved in. Um, so we started the company, and the CEO of that company, I was a senior executive. The CEO said to me, "Oh, don't worry about the go check the internet and see if there's a company that has a similar name on the internet." Well, there was no company, there was no website like that. So he said, "Well, just use that. That's okay. We don't need to hire an attorney to do all this research." I said, "I really think it's a bad idea. I really think it's a really bad idea." Well, it turns out that a company who's pretty famous now, who wasn't then, actually had registered that name and started to use it. They just didn't have it on the website. And so what happens? We get a cease and desist on that thing, and we had to change the name of the company. And it wasn't a big deal in the beginning, but it's a big deal when you've been using the brand for a year and a half.
yeah, because one of the first thing you're trying to do is build up your brand. And if you have to change name midstream, I mean, you essentially lost everything,
Right.
and you
Yeah.
need to rebuild, and the energy and the enthusiasm, and these are painful. This is very painful litigation to go through. Um, so these are the issues you need to look at. The second thing, then the following step, once you've resolved all your legal issues and you want to go global, is actually to make sure your product is global. And how do you know that? You can say from a distance, all the needs are the same throughout the world. Um, that's a statement that may make sense on the B2B from a B2B standpoint. Um, Definitely less so on the B2C with the B2C approach, because customers behave differently in different countries. The language you use, and the issue of localization, in what language does my site operate, is important. Are there things that are that on my website are culturally offensive elsewhere? Like the use of colors, the use of words, the use of pictures. I mean, these are not straightforward things, and you can think you can do it, from Silicon Valley or from Cambridge, England. No, actually, you need local intelligence to make sure you understand you're not doing something that's, offensive, that's wrong or irrelevant. On the B2B side, um, there are many applications that actually do need more than just language localization. If you do, for instance, if you do an accounting software, although accounting has got now international norms and standards, there are always differences, especially if it includes the tax things and the tax code is different country by country. So before you go global, you need to get real strong local intelligence, understand what you need to do, um, see if it makes sense, because there are some cases where the cost of localization is too high, and so you can't go global.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're right about that. Sometimes we got to think about, we may have to take our website and turn it into Chinese and Mandarin and Cantonese and all kinds of different. You're right about it. That's a challenge. So when you look at when you look at it, Eric, you look at the right moment to expand beyond the home market. Really, there's signals, right? So if you have 20 to 30% website traffic increase or trial signups coming from outside the core region. I mean, these are simple things, right? If you see in business come in, go for it. You've achieved some sales motion. Your churn is less than X%, 15, so you know that something's working, and you can fund at least 12 months of runway without starving your business. The other thing is sometimes people expand too quickly, right? They go out and they start going global and they don't have the money to be able to suffice and they go out of business, right? So it's a balancing act, isn't it? It's always a balancing act of how to do it, and at the same time, make sure that you're not building it on false promises. You're not
yeah,
delusional about how your business is going to grow.
yeah, and the point of delusion. Actually, one indicator I use is I try. Okay, so assume it's a SaaS, it's US based, it's B2B, right? Um, I want to look at the structure of the traffic you get, and I need to understand whether you're actually, for some reason, you've hit the model load and you just keep digging, but it's actually just one thing. You're not even global throughout the US. So if you're still very specific, geography specific, or industry specific, or something too specific, it probably means, it certainly means that you need to check whether you're ready to go global. Um, because if you're not global in your own country to begin with, there are little reasons to think it's going to be easy to expand. So that's one thing. On the cost side, you really need to understand the cost of localization, and you got two levels of cost. One, doing it, but there is another issue with development cost, because if your software is poorly written, you realize that there is too much hardwiring in the software, the application, and then you have to rewrite lots of things. It's not plug and play. I go from English to Mandarin to Filipino to you need to be able to have that flexibility. To go back on the signals, it's really getting a sense of what is why are you becoming viral in your base market, and really understand that, and that will give you the signal. Forgetting about the financing side, but at least from a product standpoint, I have something stable enough, attractive enough that it makes sense to globalize it.
Yeah, because you don't want to stretch yourself so thin that you're trying to battle the windmill back in your home area, and at the same time you're going after these other areas where you're not sure you've got product market fit. That's the other thing is right. They're out there trying to grow the business, or they're hiring salespeople too soon, or they're hiring marketing people too soon before they understand that their product really works and that it can go global. Right? They haven't built the foundation for the house. So, um, how do you add the culture dimension? You mentioned it briefly when going global, right? So you said localized, right? Not just language. Um, for instance, U.S. buyers look over things over integrations. German buyers will grill you about GDPR, workflow, right? Embed regions. So the other thing is region specific compliance. You talked about that. It's always different, right? Payment options. What kind of payments are you going to use if you're in the Philippines? Maybe it's Gcash or some affiliated company with that. You've got to make sure that it is specific for that market, right? And even your UI metaphors before translating text, right? You got to make sure that all those pieces are in line. But how do you do that when you're a small company, Eric, and you don't have a lot of money? How do you take care of all those things? How do you optimize?
The First of all, well, there is some basic market research you need to do, and at least two levels is identify the attractiveness of the various markets you want to go after, and then it gives you a priority list, and it gives you a sense of um, you know how much money is worth investing. So, very concrete example: if you're going to Latvia, it's less than 2 million population. If you need to localize a lot, it's probably not worth it as opposed to going first to Germany with 85 million people. So that's the kind of basic things. Two, it's to get some local intelligence, understand exactly what it takes uh, to go there, not just the legal thing, but all the cultural issues. When you're a small company, it's difficult to get this information. So this is why from the very beginning, you need to start building up your network of people, because nothing, internet is great, but it's always better to have some local contacts that can tell you, this is good, this is bad, this is okay. Take the example of the color red. Color red, Western civilization essentially means no. Chinese civilization, it's good luck.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good.
So
so,
yeah,
so what happens when they go to a red light?
yeah, exactly. So in some
That go?
cases, it's either good luck or you get into a crash. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of small things that I mean, if you don't know, you don't know. And so being able to get this local intelligence will really help you. Um, we discussed it a few times about GDPR and all the privacy issues. The fact is the under even just the basic of understanding of what is privacy is very different. I've lived many years in the US. I understand the culture fairly well. I've lived in the UK. I've lived in Paris. Um, you know, Privacy is a cultural item. Your understanding of privacy is very different. It's different in England than in continental Europe than the US. And the fact is, whenever you deal with information, the issue of privacy becomes very, very important. So you specifically need to address that.
So, when you're doing the landing strategy, right? Do you do a beachhead strategy or do you do the big bang? Is it a shotgun or a laser approach? So how to we talked about this a little bit. Tackling several markets at once, or just pick one and go forward. What do you think? What's the right thing for a startup to do?
It depends. It's actually, first of all, it's a very, very good question. It's the most important question. Do the scatter shot or a beachhead, in essence. Um, this is why I mentioned before, you need to understand how you went viral in your own market. So, to be concrete, if you're Uber, the way they did it, they started to build their model in San Francisco, and even more specifically around San Francisco airport. Um, and then they tested the model, and then when they saw it worked, then they started expanding it in various cities throughout the U.S. And then once that was stable, they realized, okay, we can go now after many different markets, but we can do it step by step because in every market there are some regulations about taxis, licenses, all these things. So we can go step after step. Okay, so this is a case where a beachhead strategy works. because in essence, this is what you've been doing in your own market. In some cases, if you invent something, if you have an app that's absolutely brilliant, not very well protected, and you realize you need to cover the market very quick, then it says, scatter shot, because I only have one shot at doing this. So I need to saturate very quickly. And obviously, it's more
Mhm.
expensive. But so you need to understand what your growth model actually is. Do I start small and expand, which in essence is a retail model, the way you build a retail chain, or is it more, I need to really capture market very quickly, and become a truly global brand almost immediately.
Well, you look at it, one of the things for the US startups, right? You would look for the startups here, you want to find a country that has English is acceptable, you predictable regulations. So like the UK, the Netherlands, Singapore, and nail one, right? Nail it down, and then rinse and repeat the playbooks. Use the playbook.
Yeah.
You gotta make sure that you're adapting to the market and iterating, but use the playbook and just test. And if you do it that way, I've seen these companies, out of the 176 startups we have, I've seen them do these wide approaches and they end up failing because one is they don't have the language capabilities, right?
Yeah.
It's not so easy going into a market and you're in you're doing Arabic on one side and the other side you're doing Chinese, and you're trying to figure out what it says and not offend people. And you got to, it takes time. There's only so much you can use generative AI to do to
Yeah.
figure it out. You need those nuances, and so it's important. Um, so wanted to go down through. So there was a couple other questions. So what do you think about, look at the market today, right? The U.S. dollar is dropping, but how do you rethink pricing and currency when selling on three continents? Because you got fixed costs, right? Your price. How do you adjust? Is it dynamic pricing, or do you use a pricing ladder pegged to local purchasing? How do you do it? Do you quote in local currency?
That is a very old question. Ever since companies started going global, they had that question. So, and you got two principles that do not work in the same direction. The first principle is you want to align your cost base and your revenue base in terms of currency, because you may have a bad surprise. So you're in Sweden with krona. This is your cost base, but then suddenly dollar goes up, down. Your profitability, although nothing's changed in your business, you still get the same volume. Your product profitability becomes very unpredictable. So
And what happens when you're upside down, Eric? You get into a situation where you're upside down in terms of your pricing. Your costs are more than what you're selling it for in that country. What do you do? Do you have to reprice? How do you do that? I mean, there's different strategies, right? You could use a quarterly price reviews and bundle high touch success in markets where there's self serve adoption lags, but really you've got to like take it into consideration and make sure you're making the money, and you can't be adjusting every day the pricing, right? How do you do that for a market so it doesn't look like you're fickle?
first thing is you need to be humble when it comes to forex, to currency. A lot of people feel they know in what direction it's going to move. My reaction to that: if you really know that, stop doing what you're doing and do a hedge fund based on currency. So nobody knows you, so you have to be very humble in understanding that it can go all sorts of directions. Then you get to exactly what you say. You need to you can't adjust your cost base simply. Um, if you realize that, okay, it means I need a manufacturing base in the US, one in Asia, one in Europe, it will take time to implement. So the only lever that's left to you is pricing. Um, Dynamic pricing allows you to do that, but then there's the issue of fickleness. How does it look like to the marketplace? The fact is, the market understands that. There's a, the standard example. You think about airlines. About 25 to 30% of an airline cost base is fuel. And as we know, prices vary
Yeah,
widely.
absolutely. And
So, yeah. So what they do, they got this fuel surcharge, and as a customer, you're very aware that my ticket costs that much, but then if there's too much variation in fuel, the price will adjust. So the lesson of that is that if you explain that to your market, you got some flexibility in from your pricing standpoint. But it means you need to educate your customers from the very beginning.
no, I got that. Listen, we're coming up to the top of the show. We didn't get a chance to answer all the, the sales and go-to-market models, talent and culture, compliance and residency, data residency, and we'll need to do that on another show. It would be great to have you on for a part two of this because this is really important and people don't think about it. Eric, closing thoughts and how do people get a hold of you?
Okay, they can get hold of me. I got my email address on the screen, I hope. And then closing thought, um, it's very tempting to go global because you hear about all these companies that have done it, and the riches it created. It is very complicated. It is very complicated. We live in a world. There is a 200 plus countries in the world. You go to Canada, you realize that actually, yeah, Canada, all the provinces are different. So it becomes very complicated, very quickly. And the more you dig, the more complex it is. So get the basics right from the legal standpoint, from the cultural standpoint, and from understanding what was the true nature of your growth model.
No, that's great. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. It's appreciated. And thanks for all of you for joining. So if you like this, click and subscribe at the bottom. You'll see it. It would be great to have you here as part of our family. We believe that intellectual capacity is evenly spread, but opportunities are not. And at Simple Night, check out simplenight.com. Thanks, Eric. Be happy, be
Right.
safe, and be healthy. And we'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Thank you.